Hi everybody, I'm Peter Skiera, aka Stations Guy, and I'm doing this video today to kind of update Como Audio customers and users who may not be up to speed on latest developments, previous developments, history. You might check the YouTube channel out once in a while and there hasn't been any postings. Maybe you subscribe, haven't gotten any new updates. So what I want to do is just go through a little bit of history and then bring you up to speed to what's been happening. So Como Audio unfortunately went out of business actually 2 years ago this month, March of 2023. We closed our doors, laid off all the employees, including myself, and basically it was a supply chain problem. And I know you hear that all the time, COVID supply chain issues. It's kind of a cliche. It really did apply to us. This is really the truth. We were a small company, only a handful of employees. Our costs went up. Our ability to get parts was really diminished. Our ability just to get goods, that lead time increased dramatically. So for example, if we placed an order for new solos and duettos, there was a 12-month lead time from the time we placed our purchase order until the goods were ready was a whole entire year. Then add in inspections and shipping on top of that, and you're getting closer to a year and a half. And this just was not a sustainable business model for our company. The CEO, Tom DeVesto, had personally invested a lot of his own money to keep the company going. We did a couple of early on Kickstarter campaigns, which were short-term fundings to help with development costs for products. We did a couple of equity crowdfunding campaigns like Start Engine and WeFunder. Really, the long-term solution was getting an investor or several investors to pump a few million into the company, because we were at the time developing a new Musica model and we were running into development costs we were going to have to start paying very soon. We just didn't have the money for that. And on top of that, we had a space adjacent to our office that we wanted to transform into a production facility and actually start building product in the USA and hiring American workers. That was going to take, multiple millions of dollars to develop. So we had all these costs. We weren't bringing in the kind of revenue we needed to cover these costs. We didn't have any success getting some high net worth investors to come into the picture. So there really was no option left except to close the company. So that happened 2 years ago. I had been with the company right from the very beginning, even before we even had an office. So I had been with the company for 7 years. I used to meet the CEO at a cafe in Hingham, Massachusetts, and it was literally like doodling on napkins and things. Went to his house numerous times, stayed over during the early development. Finally, we got an office in Boston on the waterfront in an industrial design building, which is a really cool office space. And then we eventually moved to a office in Braintree, Massachusetts, which was larger and had some warehouse space, so we could have our own warehouse instead of paying a company to deal with all the warehousing. So that actually saved us some money. It was nice for me because it cut my commute time down quite a bit too. So that helped us to continue, but ultimately, we just couldn't do it and we had to close the company. I was laid off. I actually didn't get any notice. I was called and told that that day was my last day. I didn't get any severance. I didn't get a bonus. I didn't have a golden parachute. I wasn't partial owner of the company. I wasn't on the board. I was just an employee. Even though, I had a long history with the CEO, had worked for him for several of his previous companies. So we had gone back like 18, 20 years, something like that. And in fairness, he did keep me on probably longer than he should have. He probably should have laid me off earlier than he did. Although, truth be told, my salary was being cut regularly during this period. So I went from a 40-hour week eventually down to an 8-hour week. But I worked much more than that. I put in a lot of time that I never got paid for. Why did I stay with all of this? Because I believed in the company, I believed in the product, and I had hoped that something would happen to turn us around and we'd be able to continue. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But I tell you these things, like, for example, having to sell my own home, my only home, having to sell my car, a lot of my possessions. I'm not playing violin music in the background. I don't say these things to try and get your sympathy. I say it because I think a lot of people have the mistaken impression or assumption that because I had been with the company from the very beginning and had been vice president of product development and then later general manager, that, oh, I must have walked away with a whole bunch of money. Well, I didn't. I didn't walk away with any money. So I just throw that out there for whatever it's worth, just to kind of clear the air. But one thing I did about 5-6 months before the company closed, I started a service on Patreon called Recommended Stations, because I wrote for Como Audio's blog, which was called Tech Rap, and I did this feature called Recommended Stations, and I would write about 5 or 6 internet radio stations that I thought were really good, sounded good, had great music, and they became the most popular, most read articles on the blog. And eventually the blog, we just didn't bother with the blog much really anymore. So I started this service on Patreon called Recommended Stations, but instead of waiting 6 or 7 months to write about 6 stations, I do one every month, as well as one what I call a hitchhiker station, which is an odd or a strange station you never would think would exist. And that's $1 a month. So $1 a month gets you that. Then once the company closed, Como Audio closed in a way that was kind of unusual. We were not a retail outlet. We were not a retail chain. A lot of chains, when they go out of business, they advertise, they put up big signs, going out of business sale. It takes them weeks or maybe a month or more to go out of business. But when companies close, a lot of them, they're there one day, they're gone the next. You don't know anything. They don't give you any advanced warning. They're just gone. You go to the website one day, or you try and call them or email them, and you don't get any response, and that's when you find out they've gone out of business. Como didn't do it that way. We didn't hide anything from people. We didn't keep it private. We emailed everyone on our email list. We did have a sort of going out of business sale where we dramatically reduced the prices of our products. We put a statement on our website. So we didn't hide anything. But still, one day we were gone. And I felt bad for my customers, even though my direct responsibility wasn't so much interfacing with customers as general manager, as VP of product development. I did interface with a lot of customers. I spoke with them on the phone. I emailed them, and I had a good relationship with them. And I felt that there should be some kind of an outlet for them. So with my Patreon, I started a second level called the Como Elite level, which is $3 a month. And that gives you the recommended station articles, but it also opens you up to a bunch of Como Audio related exclusive content, articles about expanding information about the features of the product, features you may not be aware of or know how to use, background information, behind the scenes stories, all kinds of information. But most importantly, 24/7, 365 tech support. So if you had a question about how to use your model or an issue you ran into, you could email me. You can email me if you're a Como Elite member. When a lot of companies go out of business, they don't have this. Now, nobody asked me to do this. Nobody told me to do it. I did it on my own. It's a little bit of income. This is not like a full-time income, so it helps a little bit, but it's not a huge money-making thing. It keeps my mind active, which is important, keeps me active, gives me something to do, makes me feel like I'm contributing and actually doing something and helping people. But it's not a big money maker for me. But I mention it so you're aware of it. So if you ever need this resource, you know you have something, you have somewhere to go. Now, one thing I don't do, I can't repair product. I don't have parts. I don't have equipment to do repairs. That was all done at Como Audio. We had a parts supply. We had technicians to do repairs. That's all gone. So I can't do that. So that's one thing I cannot help you with if you have a defective product or an issue that needs a repair. But if you have other issues or questions, I'll help you the best I can. There's no commitment. You don't have to sign up for a year or for 6 months. It's month to month. You can, sign up for a month and get information and then leave if you want to, or you can stay on. So anyway, I put that out there just so you're aware of it. I also have my own vlog on YouTube. It's under recommended stations. If you expand the about link here, there's a whole bunch of URLs, and one of them will be to my YouTube channel. It doesn't involve Como Audio. It's my own personal thing, and it has to do with vintage audio, records, old audio equipment, that kind of thing. It's fun stuff. It's easy breezy. I kind of, in a way, if you'll allow me to make this a leap, I kind of think of myself as the American version of TechMoan. So that kind of gives you a sense of what I do. But check that out. It's free. But just to go back to the Patreon thing for a moment, not to harp on it too much, but just to give you an idea of some of the topics and information that I've written about over the last couple of years that I've done this, that you've missed out on if you haven't been a Patreon member. I revealed for the first time publicly the frequency response of Solo, Duetto, Musica, and Amico. We had never published those specs before. Most recently, I posted an article about what's happening to BBC streams and podcasts. So if you're into that, if you listen to those, you'll want to read up on that. I talked about, again, most recently, how to change the time because we advanced 1 hour, how to change the clock on your Como music system. The how-to videos on our Como channel, how to access those. I talked about the new smart radio portal in My Favorites and how that all works, because we have a whole new portal and a whole new My Favorites, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. I talk about what happened to the Como apps and what free app you can use to control your Como radio. Similarly, I talk about the only universal remote control you can use to control your Como products. I worked with this company, shared our codes with them so their remote will control our products. So if you've lost your remote or it's broken or you can't find another one, which you probably cannot, that's an option for you. How to access iHeart radio stations on your Como system, which are not available in the station directory. Even things like selling some of my personal Como items on eBay, like Amicas, which is the speaker you can attach to Amico to make it stereo. They're impossible to find. I listed a couple of those to get some money, let my Patreon members know about it. Also schematics that you can buy on eBay, which have never been made available. Schematics for Como, Solo, Duetto, Musica, and Amico. So all this kind of information you'll find on the Patreon page that I have. But the thing about the portal and My Favorites, something else you may not know, in 2023 in October, 2024 of October, all of Como Audio's internet service was scheduled to be turned off. Not just Como Audio, any internet radio that used an older Frontier Silicon module like Como radios did, that service was going to be terminated. Frontier Silicon had decided they couldn't afford and didn't want to pay for the maintenance of that any longer. So they transferred it over to the radio station aggregator, who said, okay, we'll continue it, but it's going to be expensive, so you need to pay a fee yearly for the next at least 3 years to cover this. It was going to be $5,000 every year. Well, problem was Como Audio didn't exist. They didn't exist to pay that $15,000. So I stepped in, worked out an arrangement with them, so they basically allowed me to represent all of Como Audio's worldwide users. I started a GoFundMe campaign We raised the first $5,000 for the first year. We raised the second $5,000 for the second year, and we raised $1,000 to go towards the third year. And all of that money went to the station aggregator. I was very transparent. I posted copies of the wire transfers. I made regular updates of the progress of the GoFundMe. And so for the next 2 years, well, actually next year, we've already dug into the first year. So for the rest of this year and into next year, up until October of 2026, your internet radio, your KOMO radio has internet radio and podcast service thanks to this GoFundMe campaign. I will be posting updates as we get closer to that October 2026 date on what happens next and what we do next to keep our service going. So there's another reason you may want to associate yourself with the Patreon campaign. Now, there are other levels of the Patreon. There's a free level, which basically gets you nothing. There's the $1 level I mentioned, which gets you my recommended and hitchhiker stations. It doesn't get you any of the KOMO information. To get the KOMO info, you have to be an elite member, which is the $3 a month. So, and that may at some point go up, but right now it's $3 a month. So once again, I just give you this information, give you an update, because a lot of people have no idea about most of this or any of it. So for whatever it's worth, there it is. Check out my YouTube channel if you would. I think you'll find it fun, especially if you like vintage audio. And check out the Patreon. Go on there and check it out. And maybe that's something you would like to try for a month or two or several months. And that's pretty much it. So I thank you so much for your time. I thank you so much for being a KOMO Audio believer and customer and being with us long term and supporting us. It was really too bad that the company couldn't continue on, but I'm trying to help to the extent that I can. We had great products, great sounding, great looking products. Hopefully they're going to continue to work for years to come. And so thank you again. Thanks for watching. Be kind to each other. And for more newer videos, check out my YouTube channel. Thanks very much and have a great rest of your day. Take care.